Welcome to Commercial Actuarial Practice course orientation. My name's Sarah Tedesco and I lead the education team here at the Actuaries Institute. If you're watching this video, it's likely that you're one of our students who's almost completed their studies towards becoming a Fellow of the Actuaries Institute. Congratulations and well done on your hard work and commitment. We hope you enjoy this capstone module called Commercial Actuarial Practice, otherwise known as CAP. We've had some feedback from our students that you'd like to be able to access more learning in a video format online. So we've created this 5-pack video series to provide you with an orientation to CAP. Each video is quite short, approximately 15 minutes long. The videos are presented by David Service, the CAP course leader and a Fellow of the Actuaries Institute. I hope you find the content of the videos helpful to your studies, and the education team and I look forward to supporting you throughout the semester with any queries you may have. Over to you, David.
Congratulations. You've just made the most important decision in your actuarial education by enrolling in Commercial Actuarial Practice. We've got 5 video sessions, each of them about the length of a typical commute, so that we give you a heads up on what's going on in CAP, why CAP is the way it is, so that when you get to the residential course in about 2 months' time, you will actually understand a good deal of what's going on and won't get too many surprises. You'll get some surprises for sure, but at least you'll be understanding what we're trying to do. There are 5 videos in this series. The first is to talk about the CAP course, why it is the way it is, its content, and how we go about doing it. The second one talks about contextualisation, which is a word that by the time you've finished CAP will be so deeply imprinted in your brain that you will never ever forget it, or the 5 steps that enable you to do it. Session C and Session D are both worked examples of how you do contextualisation. The first one's in relation to banking and the second one is in relation to investment. We suggest very strongly that before you view Sessions C and D, after you've done Session B, that you actually practice doing the contextualisation on the 2 examples before you actually look at how it would have been done in a perfect world. And Session E, the last session, there's always administrative information which in fact can be crucial to your success. So the final session goes through the key issues in relation to CAP. So the CAP course, what is it all about and why do we have it? CAP's been going since 2005. It reached its 10-year anniversary in 2015. So you may wonder why we go back to even before that. In the late 1990s and early 2000s, the Institute conducted a very comprehensive program on revising the then structure of Part 3 education. One of the smart things that we did was that we actually asked employers of actuaries for their commentary. The people that came out from Part 3, who were just qualified as fellows, we said to the employers, tell us about them. Are they useful to your business? And the universal response that we got was that they're brilliant people. Their brains are absolutely fantastic. There's only one problem. What is that, the Institute said? They're absolutely useless. They're useless, we said? Yeah, because they haven't got the faintest idea what our business is about. They're wonderful on spreadsheets, can produce fabulous numbers with 700 digits significant. But what's the point of that when I've got a marketing manager who's trying to design a new product? The Institute took all of that on board, and out of that came CAP, the purpose of which is to turn you from specialist technicians, which you ought to now be in your career, to trusted advisors, that you can actually produce advice which helps solve a business problem. If you're a technician, then context matters not at all. The business is irrelevant. If you're a trusted advisor, the business is in fact the only thing that's really important. CAP has a couple of differences from other Part 3 subjects. First, we actually give you some actual teaching, and secondly, both the assignment and the examination require you to produce a full-scale, proper report. The key learning objectives in CAP is to basically apply your skills across both traditional practice areas and unfamiliar or non-traditional practice areas by contextualising that word again. Your solutions in the wider commercial environment of the business as a whole. It's the business that we're advising. We're not worried too much about the spreadsheets. When we talk in CAP about business, we don't just mean corporates. We mean non-profits, governments, any situation in CAP comes under the title of business. When we talk about client, we don't just mean in a consulting environment. We actually mean anyone to whom you're giving advice, whether it's internally to your employment, whether it's as a consultant to whom you would call a client, or in any other situation. So those two words in CAP encompass a whole lot of stuff that in the world at large may not cover those. Now, as we do this, we've obviously got to apply all the ethical concepts, corporate governance, professional standards and so on when we're doing this contextualisation of our actuarial solutions. And finally, the third learning objective, if you can't communicate your actuarial solution and advice, then you haven't actually provided anything useful to the client at all. Communication is central to good advice. The CAP course, as you know, is a residential program. So let's have a look at what goes on in the residential program. The assumed knowledge that we expect you to come with, there's no formal prerequisites, but we assume that you've got the knowledge to have passed modules 2 and 3 in your chosen specialty, even if you haven't already passed them. We assume you actually could pass them. We also assume that you've got some investment understanding that's required either for a pass in control cycle or in the previous module 1. And we assume that you're competent in these 3 pieces of Microsoft software: Word, Excel and PowerPoint. In terms of the non-traditional practice areas, we don't expect you to have the same level of knowledge as you would have for your chosen Part 3 specialty. But we do expect you to have a general understanding of these non-traditional areas. You are, after all, well read in the financial marketplaces. You're sensible human beings. You actually have watched the world around you, and you probably interact with quite a number of these non-traditional areas. That's the level of understanding that we expect you to have, and we provide some materials for you to get you to that point. The learning environment at the residential is it's residential. If you live in Sydney, when the course is based in Sydney, don't be tempted to stay at home, because you will be totally and utterly distracted and your learning will be seriously impaired. It's a case study based learning paradigm. We'll talk about the case studies in a moment. And your course staff are all senior actuaries, and they have incredibly wide business experience in the particular areas that they will be teaching you about. Case studies. Case studies have been used since time immemorial by business schools and others. Why do we use case studies? Because the best learning environment is by doing. A process which involves you start doing stuff, you make mistakes, you get the mistakes corrected, the next time you make fewer mistakes, and as you go on around this cycle, you actually get to a point where ultimately you become an expert. Now in CAP, we don't expect you to become an expert after a 1-semester course. We do expect you to demonstrate to us that you actually understand what's going on and how you should be able to give good, valuable, trusted advice. Of course, you've all got significant experience already in the workplace. So you'll do an awful lot of learning at the residential from each other with your different experiences, because we mix you together in various syndicates so that you don't spend the 4 days talking to the same people. You actually have to work with a range of people, and you will learn from them and they will learn from you. So we've got 8 case study topics: banking, enterprise risk management, environment, social and governance, and health. We also then have the traditional subjects of investment, general insurance, life insurance, and global retirement insurance systems. But you only actually do 6 of them, because general insurance, life insurance, and GRIS are concurrent, and you need to make a choice of doing one of them. The other 5 you all do. The case study's general structure is there's an introduction by the person running the session. There are 1 or more discussions in your syndicates. There may be 1 or more plenaries for delivery of 1 or more syndicate solutions. And the session leader is going to give you a summary on the key issues which you should have got, or actually did get, particularly those that were required for a pass. And finally, all of the case studies that you do are actually past examination questions. And we will give you a real live answer, a couple of them probably, that were the answers to the case study that in fact you have just done in the residential. So you will see what people said and how good it was. Mostly there are cases that pass. Occasionally we will show you cases that fail so that you get a good picture of what it's required to pass. My experience is that most people are surprised at some of the cases that pass. We don't expect you to be perfect. We've had over 1,000 students do CAP, and there is only 1 student in the whole of those thousands, and I have seen pretty well all of the answers, who actually produced a report that could have been sent to the client without major revision. So we don't expect you to be perfect. Just convince us that you actually know how to do it. I mentioned communication. Communication is a word we use a lot. The key issue about communication can be summarised in several ways. This cartoon suggests several things about communication. So we've just made up this number. We are, after all, actuaries. Are accurate numbers actually important? So the question was, how many studies showed that? 87. A rather precise number. CAP requires both good technical work and good communication. And extra good work in one is never going to make up for poor work in the other. You need to get both of them right. The technical stuff needs to be good and sensible. The communication needs to be really good so that the client in your answer will actually get what it is that you're trying to communicate. What is your advice? The best story about communication I've ever heard was managing director of the Swiss reinsurance company in Australia when I was working for them sent out a letter to our customers because our telephone number had changed. The heading of his letter was, "The myth of the communication is that it has been achieved." So let's just wrap up session A on the crucial things that we've covered. CAP came from the users of actuarial advice. It was their feedback that provided the impetus to actually design CAP the way it is. We've been through the learning objectives. These are important because this is what you will be assessed against. We've looked at the residential program, which you'll do in a couple of months, spoken about case studies and why we use them, and finished with the issue about communication. Communication is as crucial a part of CAP as your ability to do good technical stuff.
So David, can I pass CAP by just reading the examples you show us during the residential program?
That would be very difficult to pass CAP doing that. The best way to pass CAP is to actually do as many of the past examination questions as you can possibly fit in.
So what do I really need to be doing between now and the residential course?
The best thing to be doing between now and the residential course is work through the example on banking and investment that I will give you the perfect contextualisation when in sessions C and D, but work through them beforehand and then start to have a look at some past examination questions and some past post-course assignments and actually start to do some contextualisation with them. Don't attempt to do the analyses and so on, but do some of the contextualisation. You will need to do, as we'll talk about in a later session in these 5-pack, you'll need to prepare some notes beforehand on each of the cases that you're going to do at the residential.
So you talked a lot about communication, David. Will my communication style really let me down?
That depends how good or bad your communication style is. The key thing about communication is we actually spend half a day at the residential course with talking about communication and giving you some really good pointers. The best thing about communication is make it relevant to the nature of your client, and the case study always talks to you about who the client is. Don't make it an actuarial file note, even if it is nicely formatted.